Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about shuttle buses, MAX projects, and how Trimet goes about doing shuttle buses. But before I get into that, I want to talk about some of the previous MAX projects that have taken place over the last 7 years. There have been quite a few major ones. The First Avenue project. They replaced switches on First Avenue by the Morrison Bridge and in the Skidmore Fountain area. The Rose Quarter project. They replaced switches and signals at the Rose Quarter Transit Center and removed the vintage trolley tracks. The Morrison Yamhill MAX project. This one they replaced all switches in the 11th Avenue turnaround in downtown Portland. This disruption was the only one so far to also disrupt Portland streetcar service. It required shuttles for both the MAX and Portland streetcar. It was weird. The Providence Park project. They replaced the switches between Providence Park and the old Kings Hill station. The Hillsborough project. They replaced all 5 switches at the Hatfield MAX station as well as re-bricked the entire trackway. I believe the overhead wires were at least partially replaced for this project as well. Lloyd District MAX project number 1. They replaced switches going into the Doubletree siding, as well as removing a crossover that existed just west of here. The Steel Bridge project. They replaced all switches and signals and rails on the Steel Bridge. I believe they also replaced signals sort of feeding into Rose Quarter Transit Center, and replaced other old ancient technology on the bridge that was related to the lift mechanisms. This was the largest project to date. Then there was a Banfield light rail project, which I don't believe I went and filmed because COVID and I just wasn't going out and filming these projects as much. The Banfield project here replaced worn stretches of rail between Lloyd Center and Hollywood Transit Center. Lloyd District MAX project number 2. This replaced rail and switches just east of the Lloyd Center, replacing a previously manually thrown switch with an automatic one. Now, of course, we have the Better Red. There are a total of 8 shutdowns that are related to the Better Red MAX project, which we are well in the middle of right now. If you go by the Gateway Transit Center, you might see the new structure that's going up, and it looks quite nice. Now, like I said, we're in the middle of this right now, and in a couple weeks, there's going to be a large MAX project that shuts down large sections of the Banfield portion there between 7th Avenue and Gateway. So that is going to be getting its own video later. There were plenty of other projects as well that I didn't mention, but those were some of the more major ones, of which many of them I have filmed. Now I'd like to focus on how these projects were organized. Firstly, I'll start with the MAX. They try to keep as many trains running through certain sections as possible. Frequency was tried to be kept as similar as possible to the existing system, but usually was slightly less. Trimet would always tell riders to plan up to 30 extra minutes in your trip due to the projects. Red Line trains almost always exclusively ran between Gateway Transit Center and Portland Airport only. Just a short, almost shuttle between Gateway and the airport. That way they weren't overcrowding the entire system with having too many trains trying to turn around where there might only be a single track to turn around in. And because of that, everything pretty much on the west side would only be getting Blue Line trains, and so Blue Line frequency would increase to every 10 to 12 minutes rather than every 15. That's still not as good as if the Blue and Red Line were running together, where it's about a train every 7 to 8 minutes, but it's still better than nothing. Some of these projects, such as the Rose Quarter one, had very strange train interlining where trains normally wouldn't. Blue and yellow lines were running all the way to the Expo Center. It was weird, but it allowed for streamlined operation, and it made it so that trains didn't have to turn around at a bunch of points. Instead, you could just run the trains as far as you could, all the way down to the end at Expo Center, and just turn them around there. Especially since Expo Center has 3 tracks, where that 3rd track is very rarely used, I think. Now on to what I believe is the most important aspect of the projects, the shuttle buses. Normally when you're, out and about and you hear shuttle buses will be operating between these stations and these stations, you know it's going to be a headache. Luckily, the way Trimet handled these projects was completely fine. They would post the shuttle bus map and where all the stops would be on the same web page as everything else. So there'd be a web page saying, here's our next max disruption, here's where the max is going to be closed, here's a description of where all the lines go, here's how frequently the shuttle buses will be running, and here's the route map. It's pretty much all the information in one place. Because it's an inconvenience for riders, and because it's a shuttle, they are free. You do not have to worry about paying on a shuttle bus. You just hop on. In fact, there are sometimes employees who will open the back doors of buses. I mean employees standing outside that know how to get the back doors open, and will allow passengers to board through both doors. This makes things go much smoother because, again, there's no fare evasion happening when the shuttles are free. But I think the single most important factor to making these projects go smoothly and to make the shuttles go smoothly was frequency. Trimet prioritized high frequency for these projects. In general, buses would run every 5 minutes. All day long, even really late at night, the buses would run every 5 minutes. Many of these projects would disrupt trains through the Lloyd district, which has blue, green, and red line trains, and with trains running every 15 minutes normally, that means, yeah, you're probably going to want a bus every 5 minutes, which is what they did. Now, the craziest part is during the busiest part of some weekdays, and at least during one project, the shuttle buses would even increase to operate every 3 minutes. If one bus got full, which they often did and became standing room only, well, don't fear, don't fret, or whatever the saying is. You can just board the next bus right behind it, and there you go, you're first in line for that one, and it just leaves shortly after. And this was all possible without cutting any bus service temporarily or whatever. How? The extra board. I have an extra board. Well, no, not that kind of extra board. There's a collection of operators from all 3 bus garages that can fill in any time an operator needs to. If somebody calls off sick, or needs to go home early, or in the case of these shuttle projects, or really for any purpose, extra board members can come in and drive those buses instead. So, if a disruption happens, planned or unplanned, Trimet will pile a whole bunch of extra board members into shuttle buses and have them operate the shuttle bus route until it's no longer necessary. And again, Trimet puts a pretty high priority on having high frequency and having lots of buses. After all, a bus is 40 feet long and can hold considerably less passengers than a 200-foot long max. So having the buses coming more frequently is just natural. Sure, maybe if we had some FX buses using the shuttle buses, then that could help, but we have a very limited number of FX buses, and they're also bright green and look very different from the rest of the Trimet buses, which could possibly add confusion. The Desert Rose, if that bus ever enters service before I turn 97, would also be a pretty good option, again, because it's a 60-foot bus that looks like a normal Trimet bus. Okay, one more thing. The buses themselves. Trimet likes to give lots of these old buses one last hurrah before sending them off or auctioning them off. The 2100, 2200, 2500, and 2700 series buses all have one thing in common. After they were retired, they were brought out for at least one final project during a planned max shutdown for one last go at passenger service before Trimet officially got rid of them. I'm not sure about the 2600s. It was kind of before I got into buses, but it is possible that they were used during the Steel Bridge project. I'm not sure. If one of you guys knows, let me know. I even went out during the Steel Bridge disruption, but stupidly never rode any of the shuttle buses, so I don't know what was out and about. Last thing. Here's what Trimet has been getting wrong for the last couple of years, and what might be about to change. You might notice that Trimet doesn't run these super frequent shuttles anymore. 2021 and 2022 have been incredibly rough years having to deal with operator shortage. But the situation seems to be greatly improving, and we might not have to wait a ton longer before we see the 5-minute shuttles come back. In fact, Trimet even announced on their Twitter that during this upcoming max shutdown, shuttle buses will be running every 5 to 7 minutes. That is what I like to see. The way Trimet was doing it during basically all of the better red shutdowns up to this point, and even some other projects, is to have the shuttle buses timed to the max departures. And while that does kind of work, if you have a lot of people, if it's a busy time of day or a busy part of the system, and you're running the buses every 15 minutes and timing it with a busy train that's showing up, all of those passengers are required to get on that shuttle bus. They have to. There is no, oh, well, this bus is full, I'll board the next one. It forces passengers to exit the train at the final station and then wait outside for the shuttle bus to show up, and then have to get on the shuttle bus. If anybody misses that whole ordeal, they're going to miss that shuttle bus and have to wait an entire 15 minutes before another one shows up. Which means they're going to have to wait for another train to show up, and it's going to get really crowded again. Hopefully the shuttle bus situation gets back to the way it was in the good old days of 2015 to 16 with super high frequency. But in the meantime, I thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.